Hello and welcome to today's PINA Wisdom Story, where we get to listen in on the wisdom that can only be earned by professional permaculturists working with 20 plus years of experience working within the permaculture framework. PINA Wisdom Stories gives us all a chance to hear from PINA diplomates, board members, and other pioneers from the early days of permaculture's development. We seek to make the connection between the elders in our field of study and permaculture enthusiasts everywhere on Earth. Hello, I am Jesse, and I'll be hosting today's conversation, which should last about 90 minutes. Feel free to leave any comments in the live chat for today's guest. And, interaction always makes conversations better as far as I'm concerned. So we're happy to have your interaction live as we're going. And today we are honored to talk to Daniel Halsey. Welcome, Daniel.
Hi, doing great. Thank you for having me here today.
Oh, so great to be here. Let me read your bio, and then we'll get into the interview proper. Daniel designs and consults for developing ecologically supported homestead systems, ecosystem restoration, and intentional communities, bringing site-specific solutions based on local resources, site conditions, and improved cultural practices. The majority of his designs are farms, homesteads, watersheds, and village systems supplying perennial harvest to support the community, always raising the carrying capacity of the land. And that's a short and sweet introduction to I'm sure, a much broader field of study and career that you've had, Daniel. But thank you again for being here. Where are you joining us from?
Right now, I'm in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Going to be here for most of the winter with a trip out to California for a few weeks, see family. But this is my third fortunate winter in Alabama, actually at a site I've been working on for about 3 years. Just fantastic. And in the summertime, when I can't handle Alabama, I head back up to Minnesota.
Okay. All right. So you bounce back and forth. That's fantastic. And I would love to get to know your story a little bit, but I know we're also limited in time. So let's just weave our way through your story. But where I always am just curious to start with folks is like, did you have any sort of impressionable experiences as a kid or as a youth, maybe where you grew up, that with where the land itself sort of imprinted on you, or you had a sense of like, man, I just love nature and I want to like explore this natural, permaculture lifestyle? Were there any early seedlings of that in young Daniel's life?
It's funny. So I did have some very interesting experiences that are basically illegal now. Uh, but I grew up in the suburbs in Minnesota, and as a teenager, it was pretty amazing because we had animals through my brothers and family and other opportunities. We had a pet. I had rabbits. We had a great horned owl as a pet. We had flying
Oh,
squirrels. I had a big 5 foot black bull snake that I would catch gophers for and kept track of that. I had, of course, gerbils in my room and cats and things like that. So, the animal thing was, and of course, our family got to be known for that too. And what was fun is other kids would bring me animals that they found, and
right.
which was always interesting to the point, forcing me then to go to the library. Wow, the library, to get books and read up on how to take care of animals, injured babies, things like that. But also, I have to say that I was fortunate to be in the Boy Scouts in a troop that did a ton of camping outside
Mm,
all the time, right? Analog,
yeah.
outside, did a lot of camping. My dad was into canoe trips and took us on a lot of canoe trips into Canada an
Mm.
extended time. So again, we're out in the woods, learned all about water. Of course, I grew up a block from the Mississippi River, so we floated down the river, hiked all over the place as kids, just being in the woods. We were eating acorns and crab apples and all that kind of stuff too. But it really was being outside all the time because being in the house meant you were put to work and there was nothing
Yeah.
to do in there anyway. Um,
Yeah.
and then later on, what's interesting now, it's more as I reflect on that, it was things that I didn't know would have an influence on me, like my great aunt's basement where they did all their canning. They actually had a dairy farm that they sold, but then grew all their food out in this huge garden and did all this canning. And I got to see this as a kid, never
Mm.
knowing that. I wish I would have paid attention.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that would in some ways be your future as well to some degree or another. So
Right.
then that's beautiful, by the way. I love that story. And I'm sure I can't, I'm from Michigan here. So I have a somewhat similar experience with rivers and open land and just this great expanse to explore in. And luckily, I was just on the cusp of the digital, so my childhood was very much in that analog realm, which I think is kind of priceless. Um,
Yeah.
so, but I think Minnesota, there's something fascinating about Minnesota and being that close to the Mississippi. So that you've evoked something inside of me that wants me to go explore Minnesota a little bit at some point. But
That's
let's,
great.
how did you then weave into and toward permaculture? When did you first hear about it? Was it like, wow, I'm so into it at first blush? Or was it like, I kept hearing about it and eventually I sort of fell in love with it? How did your story of permaculture go?
Um, there are, how people get into it is interesting. And I actually have almost like the 5 stages of grief sort of diagram that I use sometimes in PDCs about all the different ways that people get in, but it's basically they're all kind of the same journey of understanding
Mm.
and eyes opening. In my case, I was older. I was actually a food photographer and package designer for about 25 years.
Oh.
And right around in my 30s, I got sepsis, also called toxic shock, and very sick in the hospital, lost like 20, 25 pounds, uh,
Wow.
survived. Ta-da. But the nurse, always ask your nurses, everybody, they know everything. She said, you need to go see this doctor, Dr. Kevin Wand in Bloomington, Minnesota. And when I met with him, just a mess, right? Just if anybody knows anything about that, they basically kill everything in your body to make you survive. So all my bugs are
Right.
gone, digestive system is gone, everything, right?
Wow.
But he said, you need to learn what food is. He was a
Wow.
homeopath, osteopath doctor. And so that was it for me. Is like he's saying you need to learn what real food is, and he sent me
Hmm.
to the health food store. And
Hmm.
all of a sudden, I'm buying all this different kind of food and realizing, wow, this is actually great. And being a food photographer, I can cook quite well,
Yeah.
and because I've learned from the best food stylists and such. But then a few years ago, it actually was probably about 4 years ago, I saw Permaculture magazine on the shelf in this store. Started getting that every quarter as it came out, and then reading it, and I grew some peppers because
Mm.
that's I thought, oh, I'll try peppers because I can start them in the house in the spring and then bring them outside. That was so much fun. And then in 2003, I had an opportunity to buy a small hobby farm, which I did. Moved my studio
Mm.
out there, lived out there, and then all of a sudden, I ran into the first other permaculture person that even knew the word.
Mm.
At that same time, Paula Westmoreland, she was
Oh
at a
yeah.
little booth. Yeah, she's a longtime designer in Minnesota and all over, and still my mentor and a partner in the plant database. So that's where it kind of started for me. Was that now as I was moving through permaculture and learning all those things, and then we had permaculture cold climate, PRI cold climate, which was the group in
Mm.
Minnesota. It went from like 8 to 24 to 80 people. Did our own PDC, self-learning our area with our group, which is really great. We had Jeff Lawton up in 2006 to do a food forest at my place, which was
Mm.
great. That was the first time he visited. And then 2007, finally got my certificate for the PDC that we were running. And then, if you guys might remember, they call it the Great Recession in 2008. That's when, after being in basically what I thought was an economically totally you can't touch me business, which is packaging because everything's constantly changing, constantly have work. But in 2008, that big crash we had, that was the writing on the wall for me. And I just went back to college,
Wow.
finished my old bachelor's. I got a bachelor's in temperate climate polyculture design. Then I
Wow.
stayed and got my master's in horticulture and started to use my design skills in Adobe Illustrator to
Mm.
redo the process of design for ecological design. So that
Wow.
was how I really got into it, because I was finding gaps in my education and my learning, even though taking all these courses, PDC and stuff. I needed more. I needed so much more to understand what
Mm.
was going on. And I made
Yeah.
the big shift to that as a career to do the design work. And I did my last photo shoot in 2012. And since then, it's just been full-time permaculture.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it really makes sense because I've always thought of your designs. You can find out there probably still to this day your interview with Jeff Lawton or Jeff Lawton's interview with you. But since then, that's how I first was like, oh yeah, okay, who's this guy? He's not too far from me. But your designs were always really beautiful. Like you had an aesthetic to them that I was really. It seemed like you developed it yourself almost. It seemed unique, but it was also like, I didn't learn that aesthetic in my PDC. I really want to study with that guy, or
Right.
I really want to learn that. Like, and so that makes sense given that you kind of had a background of marketing and sort of aesthetics first in a way, and that you then brought that
Mhm.
into your permaculture work is really fascinating and really a gift, I think, to designers who get to work with you. And so we're going to talk about United Designers. That's sort of your main business at this point, as I gather. And you can correct me if I get anything
Right.
wrong there. But maybe give us we're going to go into the PowerPoint. Maybe now's the time, but I'd love to know how United Designers came about, and then we can go much deeper into it. And if you think the PowerPoint's like the perfect time for that, we can do that now, or we can do that in a second.
Um, so yeah, let me just shortly, and then we'll go into that.
Okay.
Um, so in 2014, and right around there, maybe it was a couple years before then, there was PRI USA, which was the nonprofit permaculture master group in the US, and it had been basically mothballed. And I had an opportunity to open it up again. So
Mm,
knowing how to do these things, I basically opened up the nonprofit again, got the checkbook going, all those kinds of things, um, got some money flowing, and with the conversation with the board of directors, we were just talking about all these different ideas, concepts, all sorts of different culture and bringing it around in the States. And I had this idea for United Designers.
mm,
I'm not sure what it was called at the time, but just saying we need to build teams. We need to do this. We need to use more of a group and less of this, the lone wolf, less of the lone cowboy stuff, right? Everybody
right.
out there on their own. We need to, get the team building. And there just wasn't time, energy to do that. And so I just asked him, I said, well, you mind if I just run with this? Because I think there's an opportunity here. And they just got their blessing, said, yeah, take off. We got other things to do. So that's where it kind of started. And
Mm,
with that, I at the same time started doing the digital classes. So like the video that you talked about with Jeff Lawton, where we're just showing pencil work mostly,
yep.
and Javon Berkovich in Victoria, where he lived there at British Columbia, went there to teach pencil class there. And then I was invited by Warushka Kierkegaard to go to the Netherlands and teach the digital design process. So I have been using Adobe Illustrator, even in college,
Okay.
to redo my work and submit it the way I wanted it to look, and doing quite well with that. And so I started putting together the program to teach the actual process of doing it digitally using Adobe Illustrator, but also at the same time telling people that once you get through the course and once you know this platform and how to do
Hmm.
this, we are a team because this is going to be our platform, how we design. By the way, I have to say, the design work doesn't come in the computer, right? It comes out of the head. And mostly it
Mm,
comes off of notes and scratch paper and spiral notebooks and sketches and things like that, right? And then
yeah.
we communicate it with the design. So nothing is actually answered in the design except it's a great platform to play with, right? Move things around.
Mm,
So that's how we started in the Netherlands, where I met Rushka Kierkegaard. She became our co-founder with United Designers, and really with the team help, right, of another person. Then we started getting the course online, marketing that to other people. We've had 73 people go through the course. We have 17 plus other people that we're working with in United Designers. And the only rule we have is, first of all, we hire you or you hire us. That's how we work, right? We're not
yep.
a club. We're a business, and we expect you to be a business too. We only work with individuals. We don't work with businesses other than individuals who are the designers. And then we
Mm,
work together to get the work done. And with that, we as a team have developed our own symbol library. We have like 450 plus symbols for plants in our platform for us all to share. So as we do the work and as we work together and we're working on the same platform, we're also sharing all that artwork at the same time,
yeah.
templates, PowerPoints, even things like that. And so that's
Yep.
what's working so well for United Designers is that we're totally transparent. We have a spreadsheet we call the fee sheet. Everybody knows what they're getting paid, who's got to do what, when it needs to get done. And we work as a team. And if there's a problem, that's great, get it done. We'll deal with it later. That's basically the
Hmm.
other rule. It's like the job comes first. Let's get this done and we'll work whatever else out we didn't do right. We'll make sure we
Right.
got it done for the next time. But
Yeah.
it's all team design at all levels. And so the more work you do, of course, which I call the mileage, the more mileage you have, the faster you get, and the more experience you have to draw on so that you can do other work.
Well, and so a quick aside on this, you also curate with Paula, right? The Natural Capital Plant Database, which is
Right.
so, and that is also sort of a platform aspect that all of your designers can draw from. Is that true? Is that how that's kind of used in your United Design work?
Exactly. So
Okay.
in the process of working as a team, we also have Dropbox folders where our artwork goes, our templates, our symbol libraries, all those things go. We share that. We have a basically because it's in Dropbox and we're uploading and people will send me their new symbols. I'll put them in the big list, let everybody know, and then you can download the new symbol library. But we have that.
That's
But
amazing.
the plant
Yeah.
database is another resource. And actually, I have to say, Paula Westmoreland thought of this in 2003, started building it. I joined her, I think, in about 2008 or 9 as a business and saying, here, we need to take this to the next level. We had
Yeah.
1,300 plants, mostly in the Midwest. Now we're global. We have 4,500 plants, over 7,000
Wow.
users, most of them free because it's all free, unless you want to do certain tools and you pay for the tools, but it's still very
Right.
affordable. But when you're in United Designers, the way we work it, and there are some commissions and everybody has to make some money to pay our bills.
Mm.
As long as
Yeah.
you're working and you're paying and you're helping everybody else work too, all that stuff is supplied.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the plant database, and then of course everybody has KML files from Google Earth, all sorts of great resources to basically to get the job done and communicate well.
Okay, I keep having more questions. This is great, by the way. I love this model so much. It makes so much sense to me, and it seems like a great way to bridge somebody from being a really young designer to getting a lot of experience pretty quickly without a lot of the pitfalls that you can fall into when you're working on your own. Now, are you only open to like, does someone have to have a PDC? Do you kind of think of your work as like almost an advanced permaculture training, or could somebody be not knowing permaculture at all and still join United
Right.
Designers?
So we have a number of people that have gone through the course that have never had a PDC, but they have
Okay.
expertise, right? So
Yeah.
a botany, or they have a college degree in some horticulture or environmental science or whatever. But there are a number of people that have taken the course that haven't had a PDC. I do encourage that for the philosophy that actually supports what we do and all
Right.
the great information that's a part of that.
Yeah.
But it's not a requirement for it. And also, permaculture is a foundation of what we're working on, but really what we're doing is ecological design, and that's what we call it, is
Yep.
more ecological design with permaculture philosophy and principles.
Okay, beautiful. Well, this is a perfect segue. Now let's hop into your spreadsheet. Daniel's prepared some great slides to go a little more deeply into
Okay.
United Designers work. So we'd love to see that, Daniel. That'd be great.
All right, I'll get that here.
Yeah, and the root connection is asking. So do I understand correctly that anybody can apply to be a member of United Designers?
Well, here's the thing. So we have a platform that we use for doing the design work for as a designer. And if you want to be a designer and you want to work in the platform, you really need to take the design course. And
Okay.
there's 3 levels for design. There's like the 595, I think it's the 1250 and the 1750, $1,750 for the expert level. That's so that you know our design process and you know how to use Adobe Illustrator at the basic level. You know what all the resources are so you can actually do the work at whatever level you want to work, right? So, but if you want to just hire us for your purposes and what you need to have done, great, because we have people like some of the people you see on the screen here. Alicia is a GIS botanist. She is amazing botanist that
Mm.
also does GIS. So there, she does plant community maps that would just
Oh,
blow your mind on an area. Um, and then we have Bruce Blair at the top. He's actually is a teachings in landscape architecture. Uh, Owen Hablutzel is actually a holistic farm instructor. Sarah Garcia down in the bottom there, she's in Spain. Mike is in the East Coast. Rushka in the upper right, she's in the Netherlands, the co-founder. So basically, people have different roles for how we work.
yeah.
And I think I don't really have that slide in here, but you can see on our website that we have consultants and we have partners. And so, as you can imagine, if somebody has a degree in GIS and that's their business, they don't need to know how to use Adobe Illustrator and they don't need to know permaculture, but they need to be an expert at GIS to give us what we need. And of course, over time, as people work with us, of course, you just learn it through osmosis.
Right.
So as we work with people, they get to know permaculture, they get to know the understanding, and it all comes together. But what we really need are people that are experts in what they do to supply us with the information that we need.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
this is
Perfect.
great.
Thank you.
I
That's
just
great.
there's have to show a little Dory there. She's my cat. That's my workstation on my RV. That's where I'm working there.
Yeah.
And I wanted to show you too. So these are, you can see August of 2010. This was my first professional design when I was still in school for a mandala garden for a Native American community, and which made total sense to them. They were absolutely on it, and they were the first people that let me put in, and they put in 12 more
Nice.
in the next few years. I started out designing community gardens for
Ah,
community groups. And also the food forest that's on the far right there. That's when Jeff Lawton visited us in 2006 on my
mm,
own farm. So I started using my own artwork, right? Creating my own artwork, trying to figure out what would be best back then. And then over time, of course, we've kind of progressed on that. But I want to say is, especially in permaculture and with our team and the people we work with, this is like heirloom used to farm. I'm so impressed with the people I meet. So Kelsey Love here, she's a one-woman farm on 5 acres, grows all this food, lives in a tiny house off grid, and grows vegetables for 15 families, and has beeswax candles and salt and soap and all these kinds of things. It's just amazing because she knows, and she just took this sandy plot of nothingness, abandoned cornfield, and turned it into this huge productive field.
yeah.
Following the principle with her, she's actually a biodynamic farmer, and that's also, there's gradients of biodynamic farming, of course, but she's has a bachelor's of science degree in that from the UK, and she's
Mm,
using this in her design work. And she took my course back in, actually it was in 2014 when we were still doing pencil. I think our
mm.
last pencil course was probably, I think it was 2019 maybe, and then now it's all digital. We don't do pencil anymore. Very
Oh,
sad
okay.
for the pencil people. They love I love pencil. I like art, but I can't make changes. This also, we work in a scale. This is Molokai. Um, Molokai Ranch, which is 58,000 acres. So here's 5 acres where Kelsey was working. And now we were called to, as permaculture designers, to come on to Molokai in Hawaii and do a site assessment on the damage of 58,000 acres
Wow.
there, walking it for 2 weeks. And on the right side is basically my highlighter and pen map on my printouts. I just printed
Yeah.
out a map book because it was so huge to put our notes in. And that too, see, you can see how our designs start by doodling, right?
Yeah.
Talking about it, bringing out the crayons, things like that. And then also we get a chance to travel. And this is actually in Senegal. And again, what's funny about this is in Africa, this is in Senegal. And look how similar the production and the richness of the food production is, right?
Yeah.
Even there, which is just south of the Sahel. So there's desert and sand and all those things too. So that's
Yep.
that's kind of a little bit about how we design. Again, taking information from people. This was done for me by Josh, who did the work with drone information from the client, and then we were able to make maps. And like you were saying about the style of our design, this
Yeah.
is what we want. We call it the easy read. uh,
Mm,
Low noise, very obvious. Colors are muted. Everything is muted except the things that need to be seen right off the bat. And we
mm.
love that because there are things that we hide in our designs until somebody asks for it. And then you say, oh, it's right there. See that? And then all of a sudden it shows up. All the things
Oh,
show up.
cool.
There's a lot of information in here. And again, that's just basic graphic design skills working in there. This is the final map for that project. And
So beautiful.
this is the power of graphic design and Adobe Illustrator. Is there are many layers to this, but it's like a book in the shape of a map with all the
Yeah.
information to basically explain. Of course, if you're going to install this, that's a whole another level of detail.
Right.
But that's the kind of work we do another place too. So the nice thing about the way we work, and again, this is teamwork with Matter. They will also work in with a NGO in Haiti, and again, doing the site assessment, understanding the production that they need. This is right by City Soleil, right by the main towns and right along the ocean there. Just a
Mm,
fantastic place to work. But again, how we display the information and explain things, like I was saying, we're the explainers. You can see all the little call outs. That's taking the bigger picture and then zooming into different pieces of it to
mm.
explain what's going on in that so that everybody understands. One of the things that's what's funny is we always say is that, well, whoever you deliver this to, guess what? They have to explain it to somebody else, right?
Mm.
It's like everybody's going to ask them, and then somebody else is going to ask them. So everything we have on here has to be obvious. It has to be explainable to people, and not just not just a design with a bunch of scientific engineering maps or things like that.
Right.
With the UD, I also wanted to mention that we have our own documentation and site assessment forms. We have an 8-page data table, we call it, which has, especially for the US, but also in Canada, the Netherlands, Europe, Belgium, links to find all the ecological data you need in order to do your design work. So it's all the questions, right? If you don't know what the questions are, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So we have a sheet with all the questions, and it's 8 pages. And actually, in the course, you go through that for whatever site you're picking, and you're able to now learn all that information. Patrick Whitefield, I don't know if you remember him, he had a
Yep.
book, I think it was called Reading the Landscape.
Mm.
Um, and it's like that. It's like all of a sudden, you don't even have to be there yet. You understand what you're going to be dealing with. Once you kind of learn how to read the landscape, just from the aerials, the pictures, then you go into the detail. And after a while, that pattern recognition, remember patterns to details, pattern language and pattern recognition starts to build in your brain, because all these things repeat as you go to all these different sites. Situations repeat, soils repeat, landscapes repeat, and the more mileage you have with doing it, then you understand here's where we need to start when
Yep.
we go in.
Yep.
Again, half acre, 60 acres, 58,000 acres. It doesn't matter. We can do the resolution in Adobe Illustrator is basically almost infinite.
Yeah.
So because we're working in a vector file, not a raster file, which is like pixels, you can add a lot of detail and go really deep.
Yeah.
Let's see what else they have here. Oh, again, the style, like you were saying, you can kind of see it, and people are recognizing that. And that's because we use natural colors. Our color palette is very muted, almost like you're looking at grass or you're looking at an aerial of a field. We try not to have anything stand out more than anything else, unless, for some reason it needs to graphically. So
Hmm.
it's just easy on the eyes and easy to look at. If there's bright colors, primary colors, things like that, it causes eye fatigue, and people
Yeah.
won't look at it for very long. But in this
Yep.
sense, you can go on and look at it for quite a while. So, but I'll stop with this just also to let you know that, like I said, we are the explainers, and as we work in permaculture as designers, when you start doing more and more work, eventually you can jump on with USAID anytime. They're always looking for volunteers to travel. And I know a permaculture designer, I was just watching a video about them working out in Africa.
Mm.
There are lots of ways to get the mileage, but also you have to have the experience and the expertise to bring to the table, of course, in order to get the trips, you might say, but then also to be able to explain simply what actually needs to happen.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah. No, I mean, anybody seeing this who isn't inspired to take their sort of permaculture graphic aspect of their design to the next level, I think, this has certainly provided the inspiration for me to want to take that to the next level. And I've talked to a few folks on this podcast interview series about, the PDC is fantastic and it's full of wonderful life-changing information, and it's a lot. It's like drinking out of a water faucet sometimes. But one of the things that's not really in there, at least wasn't in mine, was how to make designs that look really good for the customer. Like, I love the
Mhm.
pencil and the colored pencil versions of
Yep.
maps because it's so tactile, as I know you were mentioning as well. But I
Yeah.
don't know that those translate as well in across the globe with all the different clients that we might want to work with, or explain in as much detail as what you're now capable of doing on Adobe. So seems
Right.
to
Right.
be a place where we could all grow into at least being able to do that as well as do our pencil maps.
And it's showing variation too, because sometimes we have to do different maps for different groups, or one with the irrigation and one without, things like that. And you can't just send people a bunch of layered vellum and say there you go.
Yeah.
And since we have the technology to do it, we can do PDFs, we can send it to people now. We rarely print out anything anymore.
Yeah.
I have my laser printer stuck away in my RV here for when I need it.
Yeah.
But because we have it available, and if we use it well, and the problem with going with digital right away is that people jump into too much color, too much saturation, and it makes for a very difficult read by the client. And
Yeah.
even as much as everybody loves the zen of using pencil, that does not do anything for the client. That's
Mm.
for us in doing that, right? And you can use watercolors, and I had the colored markers and did all those things too, which is great. But for us, we need to be able to communicate and zoom in on things and give them the experience of doing it. And now, when I go visit people, of course, most people have a big screen TV or a flat screen, or I bring my laptop, or in some cases, my desktop, and we can go through the layers on a screen.
Yeah.
And I was just in Texas doing that with the client, going through all the layers of the base map. Oh, and then let's go to the plant database, and we're looking at all the plants and the list. Oh, you know what? Let's go to Google Earth for a second. Here's the KML. Here's your site, right? And
Yep.
so there's so many great tools so that they understand where they're at. And then as we bring things in for the design, piece by piece, layer by layer, now they can understand we can bring them in over time rather than everything just laid out at once.
Yeah. The Root Connection asks, I don't know if you can see this question come through, but I'll read it. Do you use QGIS to generate maps?
Yeah. We use ArcMap, QGIS, depending on who you ask. It's like, I think Elise uses ArcMap and Josh uses QGIS. I use QGIS to do my contours at times when I have the data that I need to do that. What's funny about that, I have to say, though, it's like anything. If you don't use it enough, you forget, right? And
Yes.
I'm on as Illustrator all week, practically every day working, right? I'm always,
Yep.
and all of the designers are too, working on their things. So we're sharing information. I get on QGS and I'm like, okay, what was that again? Because I don't do it enough, which is another reason I have a few things that I can do for it. But if I ask Josh or Alicia and say, by the way, I need 2-foot contours, here's the KML, blah, blah, blah. Oh, can you do water conditioning? Also, can you do a stream bed analysis for me? For them, it's like, that's what they do. Right?
Yes.
And I think that's part of the sharing, and then understanding that get people that know how to work on it and they deliver, and it's amazing. And then they ask, oh, do you want a PDF, a DWG? They even know the files that work for us, right?
Yep.
And so you'll get a layered file. And ArcMap actually has a plugin for Adobe Illustrator. And so
Perfect.
it comes out of ArcMap as layered files. DWG do that also. And I think it's Sarah works in AutoCAD in Spain in Civil 3D, and she'll send out one of her AutoCAD files, but she knows to send us a certain kind of file, opens right up in Illustrator for us.
Perfect. Yeah, you got to love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Wen here is saying that it's great with drone data too. Do you guys do much with drone as part of your? Is it like standard at this point to integrate drone information?
If you can. The problem with drones, of course, is trees. Love trees. But I did, and I have a Phantom 4 that I do and I use when I can.
Okay.
I use it in Texas where there's just shrubs and things like that.
Yeah.
Fantastic detail, amazing. I could do all my own contours, all my own work just from the drone flight. Go to northern Minnesota. Those trees are in the way. I can't see anything. A drone can't see under the trees, right?
Right.
You have to have LiDAR. But a combination of canopy and detail and real-time imaging, absolutely high-res mapping with the drone is fantastic. But then I need to go to LiDAR to get my contour lines.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. So I had a question kind of along the lines of mapping and sort of that 8-page questions that you have as part of your system. I wonder how your landscape reading skills and capacity have grown as a result of this design work that you've been doing with United Designs. Do you find like you're able to like suss out really problem areas much more quickly, or how have you honed your just ability to read a landscape through this type of work?
It really is your feet, I have to say. So we do a lot of, all of our base maps are done usually offsite. They're done with aerial imaging and other things that we can get online, right? We do our data table with most of the information that comes from resources that are online. So now we know what the questions are. Okay, what are the gaps? What do we need to find out? But we have the maps, whether it's Hawaii or Nepal or wherever it might be. Now I have my map. So when I go there, I want to go see this and I want to go see that. And what's this thing here, right? But like Sylvia and I were walking in Maui in this 600-acre site, 2 weeks, hiking back and forth and back and forth. It's only 600 acres. But the other thing is, and this is so obvious in classes that I taught with Wayne Wiseman years ago, it was a PDC, and we would have people doing their base maps and they would go walk this property the first day, right? And they would start doing their maps. Then we'd have them go back the second day and they all, that's not where that was. I thought that was over there. It was amazing the tricks that your brain does on
Yeah.
you when you're trying to
Yeah.
map something, you can't trust it. So you walk and you walk. I know there was an orchard, avocado orchard near San Diego. Only 16 acres. I had to walk it every day for 5 days to really understand what's
Yeah.
going on, to get the detail, the slopes, the soil, digging holes, the whole thing, looking at the plants. The plants are telling me things, the soil are telling me things, the rock is telling me things, but it takes a while. And I guess I'll end with that fact also, it's your subconscious that's doing the work. You just need to keep
Mm,
feeding it all this information, and then the
mm,
insight will come forward, right? You can't
mm.
push it like anything
Yeah.
else. You just got to feed it, keep looking, knowing that you're just trying to get all the information, and don't stress out about it, because it will all of a sudden start showing up as you're doing the
Mm.
drawing or as you're looking for the questions. Plus, of course, you have to know what the preferences are of the client, what's their lifestyle, what their needs are.
Yeah.
And like I say, we have to bring those two things together. The land's got to win, but the people have to be able to be viable too on the
Yeah.
landscape. And those two things have to come together.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Another question that's sort of a little bit adjacent, but maybe on track a little bit, is I just wonder what permaculture means to you from the way I frame this is heart, hand, and head's perspective, because we need all three, and the heart maybe takes the lead, but it's like permaculture offered up to me when I started to learn about and to study it, like a practical skill set with your hands, like working on building things and putting in trees and building herb spirals. And I want to build a
Yeah,
natural swimming pool. It's very, and you were talking about geodesic domes. It's like, it's very hands based, but it's also very heart centered with the ethics and our love of Mother Earth and the sacred. But
absolutely.
it's also very head centric. You have to be logical and ordered and sequenced. So when you think of the head, heart, and hands perspective vis-a-vis permaculture, what comes to mind for you,
Right.
or what might you advise upon?
First, it reminds me back in the day. Bruce Blair in Minnesota was one of my mentors, and I was just getting into permaculture. And I just said, Bruce, this is so depressing. Everything I see is a problem. All these issues, I have no clue how this is going to go. And he said, well, the nice thing about it is that you go through all the problems on the other end, all the solutions are going to show up. And all
Mm,
those solutions are going to be the backside of all this depression, right? So
mm,
that pendulum's going to swing back again, and you're gonna see the answers. But I'd have to say is like with the heart, head, and hands. Like the heart is where our intention comes from, right? What we want to do, how we think things should go, our hope and our desires, right? The emotion part is I have this intention to do these things. And we work with a lot of people that have good intentions. And if you know where that goes, right? But they don't have the expertise. That's the head, right? That is,
mm.
like you're saying, the calculations, the measurements, doing things right. And we tell people all the time, you can have all the great intentions, but you know what? You need an engineer for that, right? We need an
Right,
electrician for that.
right,
All the good intentions aren't going to make your electrical safe, and it's not going to
right.
make your foundation not crack, right? So you
Yes.
need people that are thinking in their head, and that's the expertise. I also think that the combination of the head and the heart is what I like to call the biological intelligence, because
Mm,
that's when, like, we call it also the sniff test. It's like there's something wrong with that. I'm not quite sure what it is. And you
mm.
can watch any number of YouTubes these days of somebody doing something on their farm or, a greenhouse or whatever. And it's kind of every once in a while, it's like, I'm not quite sure about that. Maybe where they are, that'll work. So there's those kinds of things. But then also the hands, I would call it, it's basically muscle memory. If you've ever heard about that, you have to teach your body what the motions are, almost
Yeah.
like a ballet and by dance, right? That's how you get
Mm,
fast. Swinging a hammer, how you swing a hammer, how you hit the nail. That's something your body, your hands and your muscles remember. And after a while, like driving a car, hopefully, it's just automatic how you do
yeah.
that. So the skills to do things have to come basically from your hands, either on a keyboard or with a trowel or whatever it might be, or maybe it's driving a bobcat or an excavator with those things. But the capability, the expertise, and the skill has to come from your hands. But you need to
Mm.
have to really a vision of doing that, and that's going to come from your head. And then, of course, a reason, hopefully, very good reasons, and that comes from your heart.
Beautiful. I love, and that seems to me the essence of the work that y'all are doing with United Designers. It's very much a marriage of those three, and very practical on the ground designs and work. So,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
we were talking ahead before we hit play here about translating, I'm not sure exactly, you'll know what I'm getting at here, but translating between like environmental good intentions and wanting to preserve natural landscapes versus like development or like NGO work, and how, sometimes you're finding yourselves in this like translator position. Can you talk a little bit about that? And you kind of even mentioned it might even be like a cutting edge of your business development, like a new frontier for like services.
Yeah, let me. Can I share this screen again? I'll try that.
Yeah,
I have
please,
just one
please.
graphic too here. Um, let's see, sorry,
Oh yeah,
I'm
no
getting
worries.
this as I go. So, um, one of the things that's happening for us right now, and thank you for asking, is we are being asked to be the intermediaries. Like before, I was saying we are the explainers, right? We have to explain what's going on. The NGO wants this to happen. The local people have to have it a certain way, right? We have to explain how the transition is going to happen and what needs to happen, right? We have to tell it to the NGO, the people who are funding it, and we have to explain it to the local people and understand where they are so that we get buy-in and everybody knows where we're going with this. The other
Mm,
thing that's happening though recently, in the last couple of years, if we have been asked to come in when there is litigation. So there are developers that want to build this new development, right? Wherever it might be in the country. And the last one, actually, we're working on two in Hawaii, where the environmental groups are saying, absolutely not. We don't want you doing this. And of course, they just shut them down with litigation. And then they come to an agreement, but you still don't have anybody bringing them together, right?
right.
It's because you can tell, you can say, here's what we want. And they're saying, and they're not even speaking the same language. And we have to be the translators in there. So we were really successful this year. It took us a year to do it. And we had a 600-acre property with a development in Maui. And we were able to convince the developer that we were actually increasing the property value by doing it with permaculture and keyline design.
Mm,
And that was the requirement of the environmental group. What it
right.
had to be permaculture design and keyline design and environmental restoration and all these things in order to go forward. And by the time we got done, the development that they were doing was actually going to improve the watershed, which is
Mm,
counterintuitive because anything that's going to happen, of course, has to be bad. But when you're working on a degraded landscape that's been ignored or been basically depleted for generations, it kind of is anything you do is going to be an improvement. Well, if we're going to do something, let's make sure that we gather the water, make sure that we put in some more ponds, that we get
yeah.
infiltration, that we build the soil, that we get rid of the invasive species, all those kinds of things. And really, when we got to it, the developer was totally on board. And now they're taking that as the first thing they do,
Mm,
obviously to keep themselves out of trouble, right? An environmental assessment. And we've heard this from the owners. It's like the next time we do a project, we're going to call you guys first. So we get
perfect.
this laid out. We get us all this information so we can get ahead of the game because they have to get permits for everything. And as you can imagine, any country, excuse me, any county, I should say, anywhere you go, you have to now get permits from so many different people to do anything. But now they can get in front of the other issues and actually meet with the environmental groups and say,
Yeah.
here's what we like to do, but we're going to use permaculture and ecological systems to improve the land this way. And here's
Yeah.
how we're going to handle runoff. And here's how we're going to handle this, those kinds of things. So that is new for us, but it has forced us to, of course, stretch ourselves in understanding what our role is for that. And
Mm,
Sylvia and I spent the whole year working on this, reports, and we even did a new HOA guidelines for the HOA of this development. Here's
great.
where the HOA has to work. Here's what the owners may and may not do, those kinds of things. But
Wow.
also, now the next thing we're asked to do is do basically template designs for the landscapes of these properties within
Mm,
the HOA, saying, pick A, B, C, D, or E, or any combination of those for your landscape, because we want them, of course, they want to keep the water, the fires that have been in Hawaii lately, right? It's like, that's a big thing. That happened while just after we were there. And so now that's another big tool for us to say, not just pushing our agenda, but also say, by the way, you need to keep your water because if it's green, it doesn't burn, right? Or at least not as fast. We need to keep everything green. You need to keep your water, everything coming from the house, gray water systems, water catchment system, the whole Brad Lancaster book all over the landscape, right? Catch water and keep it, right? So that's
sounds great.
it's amazing, and it also is opening up new things for us. And of course, not to go long about it, but because we're a team and because we all work together, everybody in United Designers has now that information, right?
Yeah.
Those strategies and those philosophies in order to sell it to other people.
Yep. That's amazing. And I don't know if you said it, but it sounds to me like a win-win. Like both sides, so called, can be quite satisfied that, what's being put in is of benefit. And, one of the things that I think, try to bring back into the modern day world is the seventh generation type thinking. And you can't really do that work if you're not doing what you're just talking about, which is really think about watersheds and really think about ecological function first. And then, yes, of course, we can have development and whatnot as it requires and as people can
Right.
acquire land or whatnot. But this to me seems like the cutting edge of development, especially on large scale developments, to have this, like you
Mhm.
said, they're going to call you first next time. This really should be the first step before you even start to ruffle the feathers
Right.
of the local environmental groups or whatnot.
Right.
So great
And we
work.
were able, I mean, we actually, they had the engineering done for the roads and all those things. And we actually got that road changed, which is amazing
Yes,
to me.
that is
Engineers were
amazing.
actually nodding as we talk, which is like,
Wow.
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And we explained it, of course, right? Here's what we need to do. Here's the problem.
Why?
Let's do this. And then they had to go back and crunch the numbers, and they actually got it to work. So
Yep.
we're happy.
But if you could get there ahead of time, then you can avoid that sort of initial outlay of a road in
Right.
the wrong spot. So that's really amazing. And I love to hear that you guys are doing that work. Lori asks, she would love to hear more about the co-op model and how it translates into day-to-day work. So from your perspective, what's day-to-day life like with United Designers? And maybe you can imagine what other people within the co-op. Is it a co-op?
Well, yes and no, because what I'm finding out, especially working internationally, is that, like, say in the Netherlands, working with Verushka, that's a legal term, so we can't call
Oh,
it that,
sure.
right?
That makes
And even
sense.
a partnership. What is a partnership in the US is not a partnership here or in Spain or anywhere else. So
Right, right.
that's
Okay.
an issue. But what we are individual businesses, and either you're an LLC or a sub S or an LLP or whatever you want to be. You're not a sole proprietor. That's from my background. It's like you have to be legit. You need insurance. You need to have a name, a bank account, all those things. Just get
Hmm.
legit, and that's what required. But
Okay.
as far as the ongoing thing is, we have like tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, we have our weekly 90-minute chat. Sometimes it goes on for 2 hours, and we'll have 3, 5, 14 people show up from the course, by the way, all the designers from United Designers too, but anybody who's ever been in the course. And I have to
Mm.
say, the course does not end, it's a lifetime. If you buy into the expert level of our design course, it doesn't end, right? We're on
Mm.
version 3.0. When version 3.0 comes out, everybody gets access to that, to go see what's new on there, because there's new skills, new things that we want to do for the design process. So that is how we work. And so we're going to talk about, people from Belgium, Germany, Botswana, where else was it? Martinique. I mean, it's just amazing. Everybody coming in, and some people, it's like, in British Columbia, it's like 7 in the morning. It's 9 here and there, and it's like 4 in the afternoon somewhere in Europe, right? But we all together in chop. So that's once a week, and we share our designs, and we're talking about this. Last week, Kelly Bull has a project that she's looking at getting, and she needs to make the proposal. So we talked about that, and we went on Google Earth, shared the screen, and everybody's asking questions, and she's asking questions, right? For
Yep.
that, we looked at the geodesic domes that Lucas is building in Belgium, right?
Mm.
It's like, that's cool. And we're comparing, because I'm big on those and I build those too, and talking about it and kind of sharing out information. So, and then we have WhatsApp, which is on 24 hours a day, and you got to turn your phone off at night wherever you live, because the thing is bing. It's questions, this or that. And everybody who's ever been in the course is in that, plus the UD designers asking, talking about things. Rushko put her stuff up there. She's in Ibiza. Hey, I got this great design. Want everybody to look at it. Oh, by the way, we just did this report. I must say, though, it is a closed system within UD, because a lot of our information, like the stuff Sylvia and I were working on, is not public, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
UD stuff, only for UD people, because we have to respect the privacy of our clients. So we're showing these
Absolutely.
reports, and we all get to then see that and emulate that in our work going forward. So I'm working on Illustrator, then I'm working on database stuff. I'm working on the course myself. Of course, UD is kind of my life in doing this work, Plus, I have a garden and I got an RV to take care of, things like that. But
Yep.
it is discussion, constantly emails back and forth. And the more people are working, the more excited we all get because we love design and we love permaculture and seeing somebody else do the work. And then you can go on any of the Instagrams of people and just see what they're doing because we're all putting stuff on there too.
Yeah. And then so when it comes to like getting new clients, everybody is sort of doing that ongoingly through their own Instagrams or promotions or advertisements. Is that kind of how it works?
Right. Right. So we have and UD, we have our own main site, right? And sometimes we get some pretty big sites in there. I have my own site, Southwoods Ecological Design. And so I have my site and I'm getting inquiries. So
Okay.
there are bigger projects for that, but everybody is marketing on their website, plus they're tied to the UD website and then just out and marketing and showing work. And like I said, when two or three of us work together and we finish a project, guess what? Everybody's got it in their portfolio and they can
Yeah.
show it because they've done it. And that's really the way to go. So any work that we've done, we're out in Martha's Vineyard for 5 weeks last summer, working with Tara out there, Tara Gale. Fantastic, right? Opportunity to
Mhm.
work and see what's going on. Came through New York, visited the designers there, and then before we headed down to Alabama. And Kurt is working out in British Columbia, looking at some projects out there. And we just got an inquiry for another 250 acres in the Hawaiian Islands. It's
Mm,
just right. But when those things come through, it's not like, oh, I'm going to grab that and run with it. It's like, oh God, who else can I get help? I need help with this, right? Who's that
totally.
team going to be? Exactly.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you guys have really got a great system for the design. What about the implementation and the maintenance, which seems to be an area where around here anyway, I notice a lot of people hesitate to put in systems in part because they don't know how to implement it, but also B, what do I do with it once I put it in? Or oh, cool, somebody
Yeah.
came and put in a food forest for me. I don't know how to manage this. I don't manage ecosystems. So that seems to be another area where we might need
Right.
more services available. How do you all deal with like the implementation and the management aspects of these designs?
Right. On the larger projects, of course, like obviously the development is being done by the developer. The
Yeah.
projects in India and Africa are being done by the local people through our training and then through the NGO, their funding and their services there.
Okay. Okay.
On site, of course, I don't do, I supervise implementation. I love working with anybody with an excavator, all those kinds of things. But most of the designers are finding that they actually can do more work, more projects, and then they hire out the implementation. But to your
Okay.
question, okay, who is that going to be? We
Yep.
need more people that are experienced with implementation. And Rob was in our group. He went and bought his excavator last year. He's on it. So he's doing design work and doing implementation. So is Kurt, Kelly. All of them are doing their own work like that. It's just that while you're doing that, as you can imagine, you're not doing design work. You're not out
Yep.
marketing. We all love
Yep.
doing it. It's like working with pencil. I love doing that and digging, but my focus needs to be getting more work and getting more projects going and then finding
Right.
people to do the installation. There was a part of UD, this, most people don't know this. There's United Designers, then there's United Abundance. United
Oh,
Abundance is sitting on the shelf. Guess what they do?
okay.
They're the
Implementation.
installers. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And we're looking for like, a troop. It's almost like a troop of actors going around, right? They show up, do the work, get it done.
Yeah.
They show up with
Go
their
on to the
RVs and they
next one.
just install everything, right? And then
Yeah.
they move on to the
Yeah.
next one. That's tough because that's
That's
physical,
tough.
right? The investment, the assets, the capital required to do that is kind of tough. So what I've opted to is I have certain people that I work with that do the design work, but of course now that's regional too. So
Right.
in that sense, I work with homeowners. Their design goes to them and they will install it as they have time or as they hire it out. And basically, just like with the course, I am a consultant for them. And it's not like buying an appliance. There's no warranty here. It doesn't end. And
Yeah.
that's what's amazing about our work. It's like any of my clients from the last 20 years can call me up any time of the day and let's chat because I want to know what's going on. And that's
Yeah.
good for me. And then, of
Yep.
course, as I'm traveling around, I want to stop and see them,
That's
see what's been
great.
happening, right?
Yeah,
So,
I love that. Yeah, so that's the other thing that you get advantage if you join something like United Designers is you get business contracts. Like you don't know that stuff when you're just starting out and you're excited about permaculture. There's a whole lot of hurdles that you're going to
Oh,
have
we
to
have
trip
those
over.
templates, proposals, contracts, all those things are on there. And also read through this, and they're all in Word, right? Because
Yeah.
they all need to be edited. And excuse me, we also have things, samples of contracts people have sent us to
Yeah.
show them to see, by the way, we don't sign these, right? This
Right.
certain things, there's certain things we don't do. And
Yeah.
I think I can say safely, non-disclosure agreements that somebody will hit you with. I did it
Oh, boy.
once, but don't do it again, right? It's just, I say, we don't sign those. We don't need to sign those. Everything you do with us is totally private. Don't worry about it. But we do not sign contracts
Right.
with corporations, right?
Yeah.
We just don't, because that's just this. It's sooner or later it's going to bite you in the butt.
Yeah. Yeah. And that seems in keeping with the ethics of permaculture as well, to just not sign those, and work with more friendly folks, if that seems to be
Because
a
we are
mistake.
totally transparent with each
Yep.
other. That's, the UD files, with the jobs, it's just the team as far as financials go, but all the
Yeah.
files are open up to everybody,
Yeah.
so and that's the way it has to be. So
Yeah.
everybody sees and is incentivized where to go and what work they want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, let's transition here. You mentioned RV. So we talked earlier, like you're into like sort of the nomad lifestyle and minimalism as a lifestyle. And, I am too, but I don't necessarily live it as much, though we do have a very small house. But I love that you're in an RV and you go from one part of the country at a certain point and then back to Minnesota at another point. Where do you see the nomad lifestyle and minimalism sort of meshing with permaculture, and what can they sort of teach each other?
I am been loving it. It's been 2.5 years
Okay.
traveling. I have a 30-foot Class A motorhome. And if anybody knows about the organic compound in Minnesota, Will Crombie, when I sold my farm and was getting rid of everything, I gave him my library. I said, I got no place for this. And I
Oh,
said,
wow.
here's the books, man. Because he's got a great community out there. It's a great community of farming and cooperative living. It's just amazing. And I was looking for an RV, and he said, oh, you should buy my dad's. And I
All
went and
right.
looked. The price was like, really? And I've never had one of these before. I had a travel trailer. But it's a tiny home on wheels. It's not made for full-time living. But I have to say, it is limiting my consumption, as you can imagine. I'm living in
Yeah.
200 square feet.
Wow.
I love the system side of it. I love the
Mhm.
fact that I have to maintain it. I also love that it's on a Ford 550 Super Duty chassis, because I
Mm.
have taken this thing places that I would have been afraid to walk. It was just amazing. In the Colorado mountains, and people are watching me drive, and it's because everybody's told me this thing is a beast. It actually is, with a big cardboard box on the top. Um, so, but also it has multifunctional elements. I put in a compost toilet. It's got solar
Mm.
panels, a generator, right? All those things. Its own water. I have a gray water system. I don't have any black water, so I can carry all that food. I have propane. I have solar. I have all sorts of ways to feed myself and do those things. So living that way in a permaculture sense has been great. And talk about relative location. I am relative to every location I'm going to, right? So
That's a good
wherever I'm
point.
at. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I have, that is the great part of it too, is basically it's a pretty penny to pay for one of these, but the fact of what I'm not spending, let's just say on taxes or anything
Right.
else,
Yeah.
property taxes, payments, all those kinds of things, it's amazing. But I also have an environment and a lifestyle and my design clients, so
Mm.
it works for me to do
Yeah.
that. I love systems thinking. I love the constant observation. I can feel this thing it's, it doesn't, the only thing that rocks more than this is a boat, in the wind. So you feel everything that's happening. And we actually, a tornado missed us. Marushka was here visiting, and we went to the tornado shelter. Fortunately, the tornado hit the tornado shelter, not my
Oh,
rig,
whoa.
but about 200 feet away. But it was a little tornado. But the rig was actually lifted off its wheels because there was stuff under the wheels when we got back.
Wow.
So that's kind of the scary part of it. But it also is, it's been a really great experience in sharing it with other people, because it is a tiny home, and it also is limiting greatly the amount of things that I need to spend money on, and the
Mm.
things that I need to take care of.
Yeah. Do you miss having a farm? Do you miss having like an expanse of land that's like yours and you're developing it and that sort of thing?
I do now here where I am for I'm being going to be here all winter, and I
Okay.
was here in the spring. So this is basically October to April to June, somewhere in there. I can stay here, and it's Alabama. So this year I'm experimenting with getting plastic on my dome this week with a winter garden down here to see how it goes. And now that I've been here a couple, but I actually am looking at a little piece of property in northern Minnesota that has a shop on it, so that I can basically get tools and have a garden, do a dome
Yeah.
up there, do the greenhouse. So that's something that I'm looking at. But it's like when you've been moving around so much, it's just kind of funny to then think about having a place like that. Now you're back into it,
Yeah.
having a property.
Yep.
But be there from April till October. Now it'd be like 6 and 6 or whatever that might be. I can have
That's
a
cool.
place up there. I can have my shop. I can do things on the rig, but of course I can leave anytime also,
Yeah.
right? And have a place to leave my
Yep.
stuff.
Yeah, I love that. I like the 6 and 6. That's something I might try to incorporate at some point in my future here.
It's the first winter I was down here, it was kind of strange, but it's 85 degrees today.
Yep.
Beautiful weather, nice cool breeze. Can't and I got my peppers and tomatoes back going again. I left for 3 months. Here, we'll just have to say very quickly, we put in a garden in I think it was end of May, June. Left the first week of July. Just left. Right.
Wow.
It was abandoned for 3 months. Came back. What an education! The
I
okra,
bet.
the sweet potatoes, the beans, the peppers were still alive. The
Wow.
tomatoes needed some help, but I was amazed at all the things that actually were harvestable, just ignored
That's
while we were gone.
crazy.
So
Yeah,
that's kind of
nobody
my
was
own little research.
you weren't even watering it or no, there was no passive watering or anything.
Well, it's not. I'd have to explain this. This is my system to you, but we actually do have a passive water collection system
Okay.
in the dome. It's an inverted umbrella, but it
Oh,
only
cool.
goes into a big trash can, and somebody's got to water it. There's
Oh,
self-watering pots because this is, it's funny because there's detail after detail, right? The
yeah.
land that I'm on right now is mine tailings from the 70s. There is no
Oh,
soil here. Lots of trees, lots of gravel. So there's no
wow.
place to garden. So everything we're doing is in raised beds and raised pots. But I
Uh-uh.
did the self-watering pots with the reservoir at the bottom and the little pipe.
Yep.
Um, and that just needed to be filled once a week. But during the summer, there wasn't anybody to do that. Filled it before we left. The rain kind of did the rest because it's coming through the roof. There's no
Yep.
plastic on it. There's just shade cloth. So the rain was coming through just enough to keep them going. And there were tomatoes, and then the peppers were just waiting for us. They just sat there,
Yeah.
waiting for us to get back. And now they're back at it. They're 6 feet tall, but
Yeah.
they got
Hey,
peppers
man.
on them and they're ready to go. And I'm hoping to keep them alive and trying to get a perennial vegetable here going.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. That sounds great. Um, all right. So, a couple more questions. Do you have to leave at a certain point, Daniel? I don't want to be too greedy with your time. It's about
Oh
5.
no, let's go as long as you like.
Okay,
Absolutely.
beautiful. And in the chat, if you have any questions, and thanks everybody for chatting along the way with us here. But if you have any specific questions for Daniel, please let me know. His website is written down here, uniteddesigners.org. Check that out. I'm sure people are really interested to learn more, as I am. But I kind of wonder a question I always want to ask folks and hear from people on is like the counter distinction between permaculture gives us this vision of a sustainable world that is, I hate to say utopian, because that has problems, but like a practical utopia or something. And yet we live in this world that seems to be going in the opposite direction. It's full speed ahead capitalism and warfare and all that. Where do you see the hope, I guess, that permaculture offers us, and what might you envision for us as a sustainable possible future that isn't just pie in the sky or just like putting your fingers in your ears trying to go like la la la, but it's practical, is dealing with the problems that we have, but also is hopeful for maybe future generations to be like, okay, there's something to live for here.
Right, right. Well, that's kind of it's a very puzzling question to me. Is like, what is it like the sustainable future? What do we envision if everything would go right?
Yeah.
Um, and so one of the things I would hope, and if that's going to happen, right, is we basically downsize our society. I'm not saying population. I don't want to get into that, but we kind of need to downsize our expectations.
Okay.
A lot of the superfluous gratification that we
Yeah.
expect these days. In all fairness, I do have an Alexa, you know, and I can tell her to turn on a fan and turn on the Starlink, things like that. So I have those things, but there, what we're really trying to do, and I think the best case scenario is that we can buffer. There's what a lot of things we do in ecological restoration, trying to buffer the extremes. Is
Yeah.
it can we buffer the trauma of any kind of collapse, economic, ecological? Can we buffer that somehow, or slow it down, or
Mm.
understand what that is, and in the process, build a collaborative community of people to support each other in that process.
Yes.
So it's a different culture. I would think it's kind of back to villages, and Kelly, who I've been traveling with, my partner, she and I talk about this all the time because we both have rigs. We met in Arizona. We've been kind of traveling in parallel and together on things, and we talk about that as far as what is that community like? What would that be? Can there be
Mm.
a nomadic? But on the other hand, we still need craftsmen. We still need people to make stuff.
Yeah.
And for everybody just to be out gardening and growing or those all their own food is not practical. Somebody's
Right.
got to feed the doctors. Somebody's got to feed the shoemaker, the seamstress, right? Somebody has to grow the cotton, have the sheep, do the wool, have the loom, all those kinds of things, how that's going to live. So I think that in a future, hopefully it's more of an integrated society rather than a segregated society, in the way the
Yes.
fact that we're very hierarchical in all the different services that there are, and also of course the hierarchy of income and all those things too. So
Mm.
it's really tough to say what that is, but I would just hope that with Jem Bendell, who has also wrote Deep Adaptation, the paper in 2018, there's a whole collapse community now talking, and I'm part with them in that discussion also about what can happen, because that's permaculture too, in
Yeah.
collapse or a coming collapse or a pending, whatever, and whatever they
Yep.
define that as being, is how we can do that. But the best case scenario, I think, for us is to slow it down, whatever that might be, and open our eyes so that as we see it coming, we can have compassion uh,
Mm.
on it, but also work diligently to hopefully raise the carrying capacity of the planet and buffer those changes, or just adapt and not be so set in the fact that no, we need to have this much growth, this much living, this much stuff, all those
Yeah.
kinds of things.
Yep.
And maybe we'll be back to 600 square foot houses. That's what I had my first house, right?
Yep.
It's just like, talk about simple living. But on the other hand, it's yeah, it's a whole, it's so complex in urban planning, all this kinds of things. That's out of my skill set.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. The best that I've come up with is very similar to yours, and I think David Holmgren and others have said, like, collapse now and avoid the rush. And it's like the minimalism idea is like start to take responsibility for that, which is a big part of the permaculture ethics and prime directive anyway, is like start to take responsibility for what you can, because
Yeah.
otherwise you don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to griping about the wrongs and the woes of society. If you're not doing something to
Hmm.
feed yourself or take care of your own basic needs, and work in Congress with other people in your bioregion, in your
Yeah.
city, in your village, and try to make those connections now so that when and if there is a calamity of some type, that we're not scrambling, but we're a little bit more prepared, and we kind of know.
Hmm.
Maybe, like, I feel like if I have a bunch of permaculturists in my county, we kind of know how to scale up food production or energy production,
Right.
or dealing with waste if we need to at that level, at that sort of extreme
Hmm.
scenario. So
And I think
that's
there's a key to pushing the crisis. John Bradshaw in the 90s wrote a book called On the Family, about family dysfunction. And one of the things he talked about is assume the crisis, push the
right.
crisis before you're exhausted and you have no resources,
Yeah.
right? So, and with the collapse group, when we talk, and actually there's another discussion tonight, David Baum, the Collapse Club, it's called. And
Mm.
they talk about those things, and we talk about that all the time. But one of the messages I'm trying to get across is assume it's here,
Yeah.
practice, right? Because permaculture people actually choose to do things by choice, which may someday be a necessity, right?
Yeah.
And what's a better thing to know what to do than something you're required to do and you've already been doing it? So now it's
Yeah.
no trauma, right?
Yeah.
It's like I've already been living like this anyway.
That's it.
So it's like it's not going to affect me that much, which then also makes me a resource for other people, maybe a calming voice, because I'm not going to be so traumatized. It's because, yeah, we're going to have to make our own food. Yeah, we're going to have to grow our own food. It's going to taste great.
Yep. It's going to taste great. Yeah. And let's not live in fear. That's the other thing about the collapse narrative sometimes, is they put people in a place of like fear and just like shock. And that's maybe necessary to go through, but what are you going to do if that's the reality? How are you going to respond? Well, you don't want to respond from fear. My permaculture teacher, Larry Santoyo, always says that's the worst position to be in when
Yeah.
making a decision about how we're going to survive. You want to be
Poor
able to
decisions.
collective. Yep, exactly. And people in the chat here are reminding me, actually, it was John Michael Greer that said collapse now and avoid the rush. So yeah, thanks, Milton.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks. That's awesome. But yeah, I think the other thing about permaculture and minimalism lifestyles is it's really more of a joyful experience than anything that I've had prior to that, which my experience prior I would call like American suburban lifestyle with
Yeah.
the excess convenience and too many rooms in a house and not enough people in the house and disparate families. You live 30
Mm.
minutes away from so and so and that sort of thing. And that's still very much what I have in terms of my legacy, but the life I'm consciously choosing to live with my wife and in my little home village here is much more of like the permaculture lifestyle of growing your food is just better and it's a more fun experience to have like really really amazing tomatoes. Yeah, maybe you only get them for a certain part of the season, but they don't taste
Right.
like the dead lifeless tomatoes in the grocery store. So you get this much richer seasonal experience by choosing to live this way. And I just find that in and of itself can
Mhm.
draw people in as opposed to
Yeah.
just be afraid, and be out about how bad
Exactly.
things are.
Exactly what you're talking about. Because this past week now, I think it was Thursday or Friday, I actually opened up the potato cages, which were all sweet potatoes that we planted last June, right? And they've been sitting out there unattended all this time, and opened up the gates. And then the owners, the clients that are here, bringing them sweet potatoes, peppers, the
Yep.
black eyed peas we're ready to pick because they're all dried on the stalk, right? Ready to
Perfect. Yeah.
go. And it was amazing because now they were sharing and I'm sharing and we're gathering all these sweet potatoes, and the only message we're getting next year is, oh, we got to plant more of these,
Yeah.
because it's like I can't the amount of calories that went into planting those relative to what we got
Yeah.
is is infinitesimal. I was
Yeah.
amazed, and then we didn't have to do anything,
Yep.
and of course that might be obviously the summer we had here and the soil that's here and all those kinds of things. Your results may vary, but
Yep.
it's like here, okra, amazing, sweet potatoes, amazing, black eyed peas. Let's go for it. Now let's figure out what the other crops are that are totally neglectful. You can just
Yeah, I
walk
love
away.
that. It makes me think we should have parts of our garden dedicated to just, I'm going to neglect the heck out of this and just see what does good and then double down on that the next time.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's beautiful. All right. So if people wanted to join United Designers, what would be the first step? Go to the website, see which class or which level is the most appropriate for them, and then they'd sign up at any time? Or how would you advise folks getting
Right.
involved?
So there's a link on uniteddesigners.org to the course page, which is partners.uniteddesigners.org. And there you can see the different levels. And one is basically the cheapest one is just the videos. All it
Okay.
is video instruction. And of course, we're assuming you know how to use Illustrator a lot and you know a lot of stuff. So you could just use the videos and that'll take you. The next one is you can see the course, but there's no discussion. You're not part of the learning team. So you have 6 months to take the course, get it done, and then you're out. And
Got
then
it.
the expert level is basically a lifetime. You're in the group, you're in the team, you're in the discussions. That goes, and then also more opportunity to join UD as we get going. So it's go on the site, take the course, know that it's tough, know that it's going to take time.
Mm.
Right? This is not a community ed class for a couple Mondays, right? We have people that have been on there for a year and a half because life has other plans,
Yeah.
but that's
Yep.
okay. You can always come back. But it's asynchronous, any time of day, any computer. You can go on there, do the things. You got to have Adobe Illustrator, but we give you everything else.
Yep.
Dropbox, of course, there's free levels, and so you get the folders. You have a student folder for all of your supplies and works, templates, things like that. You have the UD resource library, so that's where all the symbols are and all the templates and things that you use, all the forms, site assessment forms, things like that. That's all included. And the best case scenario is you do that, you learn how it works, you get a job, you go, oh my gosh, I better call UD. And we find somebody either locally that works with you, or I or Warushka or anybody else on the team. We work with you and we get it done.
Yep.
and you don't have to worry about it. And we will take, and I have done for the projects, I have to say, I run the money for people too, right?
Okay.
It's like they don't have a business set up, and they don't have that. And Val did that. She didn't have it set up as a business yet. And I said, well, let's just do this. I'll do the proposal. You're going to be the designer. You're the project manager. You get those fees. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this work, and this work. I get this money. You get that money. And then the rest of it will pay for the course. Right. And now she had 3 projects done, and she has the work to go forward with that. So that's really what I want it to be with UD is you have an opportunity to learn. Somebody wants to hire you, and you don't have to say no.
Yeah.
There is no reason to say no when a project comes up, especially with the depth and breadth of experience that UD has. And that's just not me, like coming to me. That's all these other people that we have in the group. We can pretty much get anything done.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. It's something I'll be joining at some point, I'm sure. And I may have Daniel, but if I just Jesse, without taking any of the UD courses, had a big project fall in my lap, and I was like, "Whoa, this is beyond my scope." Could I hire UD to do part of it, even though I haven't done any of the preliminary UD classwork or any of that? Or would that be sort of something you'd want to avoid?
Absolutely. You would be probably with our help. You would be the project manager, and you would be the person on site, right?
Okay.
So if it's a place that we can't visit, say it's somewhere, Calgary or who knows where, there's not the budget for us, although we know people in Calgary too. But if it's somewhere, you're going to be the project manager. You are going to be the lead person that talks to the client, and we're just going to help you through that. And so we are going to be partners to getting the job done. Everything that needs to get the job done will be going through you, right? But we're going to help you do that. And in the process, you'll see how it works. There's no better way of learning than doing, right? Yeah. And with that, it's going to take a little bit longer, but that's where you make less money to learn. And then as you learn and as you've learned it, now you can take more of the tasks on and do it yourself. And that's where you make more money. So you don't need to actually have done the course or anything. You can be the project manager, and we just talk about it, and you are the liaison basically with the client.
Awesome. That's so good. Thank you. So let's end with what's exciting you now about maybe future developments, whether that be permaculture. We talked a little bit about geodesic domes. What are you kind of excited about over the next 6 months, couple of years?
The thing that's immediate right now is I've got my plastic and my material, and I'm going to cover my dome. So that's exciting for me. That's just nerdy, and it's good experimenting with that. The next thing is we'll be here for another month, and then I'm driving out to see family in California, parking on the beach, which I've never been able to afford before. And this is this time of year at this place, just Manhattan Beach, which is south of LA. Going to park there for 3 weeks, see the family. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then the exciting part is, and this is how it goes, is last year I was in South Carolina with Kelly, going to a game of football, and the phone rings, and it's Walter in Hawaii wanting us out there to help them with an installation, right? That's the exciting part, is I don't know. I never know what the call is going to be. Or Tara calls, and we were in Minnesota last summer, and says, can you come out to Martha's Vineyard for a few weeks? Absolutely.
Sure.
Right? I can. Martha's Vineyard? Sure.
Yeah.
Free place to stay. All the project work we want to do, and just getting to know the area. I'll do that. So the exciting part is, and like I was telling you a little bit earlier, is that we go into these projects totally ignorant of everything about that project, right? That's the glory. And then we get to learn, and we get all those neurons firing as we learn everything there is to know, ecologically, culturally, historically, anything about a property, to let our subconscious start coming through with what all the solutions are for the trajectory of where it needs to go. We're building basically a trajectory of change, right, for that. So that's the exciting part. But yeah, I'm just, it's being down here in this season, and it's a real secret though. I don't know if you guys know this, but Alabama and Arkansas are amazing states.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Don't tell anybody. My friends from Arkansas, Chase Jones says, don't tell anybody.
Well, you just told us, man.
I know. But if you've ever been to the Boundary Waters of Minnesota and seen the pines and the lakes and the rock ledges and all that, I came down here and I thought I was in in northern Minnesota and the Boundary Waters in Canada. I was
Yeah,
just
that's
amazed.
wild. I don't think of
Yeah,
it. I don't envision it in my mind that way. So that's good to know. That's yeah. And I know a
it's
lot of
just beautiful.
friends. I know a lot of friends are moving to Missouri as well, and I'm kind of hearing similar things about Missouri. So it's like, I guess I was just sleeping on those southern states. Sorry, y'all.
Yeah. Well, other than the tornadoes, the intermittent rain, the rain is just, it just comes all the time, which is great
Yeah,
with that. But it's that the land down here and everything, it actually is a great opportunity to have a farm, buy
yeah.
some land. It's not that bad, but you got to be able to stand that heat and humidity in the middle of the summer.
I
That's
would
just,
say that for me is the biggest deterrent. Like that heat and humidity in the middle of the summer is like, wow. I don't know how people are
I didn't
working
grow up
there.
here.
No,
Then
I
again,
didn't
I
either.
love minus 10. Minus
Me
10 is
too.
beautiful.
Me too. We're weirdos like that.
Yeah,
Well, Danielle, this has been really truly wonderful, and we'd love to have you back anytime to go further or deeper into other subjects that are of fascination to you. Thanks for sharing all of your wisdom with us, and also just congratulations on UnitedDesigners.org. It's an amazing design that you put into that. It just makes total sense. Sounds like it's got all the pieces that would be missing if you try to go do this on your own. So great work.
we
Thanks
hope
for
so.
making that available to us all.
Thank you, Jesse, and thank you all for joining me here. See you online and hope we can keep the discussion going. And PINA is fantastic. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that in the future. But thank you very much, Daniel, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Thanks, everybody.